Hey guys. Alright, I've made like 4 versions of this video, and I can never decide what I'm actually going to say. So I'm just going to make this really short and sweet, about the biology of sex. And what I know of what we know, we being, the scientists, about it. So, another thing that I wanted to talk about was just, something that people don't think about a lot is the influence of the impartiality of science. People sort of imagine, the man in the white lab coat, and he's saying these things, and these things are true, and don't really think about the fact that science is a product of the culture that it's made in, and so really, I think the biology of sex is a really good example where people for the longest time weren't really thinking about it. And so there was some stuff, work done to sort of figure out how it works and how you get the two sexes. But a lot of the variation that you can see in sex determination was ignored as unimportant. And I think that as our culture, Western culture, has sort of changed to at least incorporate the idea of being trans, if not accepting, because I don't think it's accepting at all, at least it's like a possibility, kind of, whereas I think before, it was just not possible, that people are looking into the mechanisms of sex determination and realizing how much it is, how complicated it is, and that it's not as simple as people used to think, which I just think is really intricate and interesting to think about the effect of a culture on science. But in terms of biology of sex and sex determination, and how it relates to being trans, there are so many. What we know now is that there are so many ways that things can move off of the two sort of pathways that generally occur. That that there's so many ways to make. There's so many different sexed bodies that are possible, and so many ways to make those bodies. You've got different chromosome arrangements from XX and XY, which are the two sort of standard variations, but you've got XO, XXY, tons of other possible chromosomal arrangements, and despite the fact that you can have chromosomes of someone who is generally considered the opposite sex, you can actually have a total, you can have an XY individual who, for all intents and purposes, appears and is female, except possibly internally. But externally, in terms of their identity, they're female, but they have male chromosomes, what we consider male chromosomes. And really, that's just crazy, and it really shows, I think, just how many different levels there are of influence that go into creating something which we thought was as simple as male and female. And so I think really the understanding that we're coming to right now is that it's not that simple. Chromosomes, genetics, hormones, both hormones inside a developing embryo, but also external hormones. And those external hormones can have huge influence on the sex of that baby. So I think that people are sort of starting to accept that we don't know that much, or not as much as we thought we did, about sex determination, and then also that that it's messy, that it is not a that there's not just these two boxes. It is actually, a spectrum, and there's so many different ways that people can vary from the sort of typical set of traits for male and female, that I think we really need to rethink sort of what that means. So then when you start talking about trans people, you have this whole other level. So not only is it possible, there's sort of a gradient of possibilities in terms of bodies and the sexed bodies, but when you get into people's heads and the so the amount of possibility there in terms of understanding themselves and their gender, and then you combine people's ability to have all of these different experiences of their own gender, combined with the fact that bodies can be sexed in many different ways, and you get this huge mishmash of infinite possibility. That said, I think that it's not easy, and I don't think that there is, it's not just a little piece is missing. I think that really it's something that is probably happens really early, like it does, really early on in life, like during development, during embryonic development. Um, I, I think that there's not just one thing either. That's the other part about it, is that there's so many different levels that any of those can produce any number of different results that end up with people who feel trans-identified. So this is actually that short at all, but I just wanted to put that out there, that I think that from what we know, it's hugely complicated. And then when you add actual people who have actual ideas about what their gender is, aside from what their sex is, it just adds that huge other level. Is that I think that it's it's something that happens early on, and I don't think that it's something that can really be sort of fixed preemptively. Um, and then, aside from the question of whether we want to, but I think that it can be a really hard thing to control, actually, because there are so many variables and so many ways to go off the beaten path and end up with someone who identifies as trans. So anyway, this is my vaguely scientific ramble about the biology of sex and as it relates to trans people and all of that. Basically, we don't know very much at all, and we should do more to learn about it. So props to you for being motivated by your own experience to get to the bottom of this, because I think it's a really big question, not just sort of for trans people, but for everybody. And I think it has the power to change culture and change our society and change the way our society thinks about these things, in part because of the power of science. And so I think that is awesome. So, yes, more power to you. All right, bye.